Hello. Oh, is that really going to be the intro? Yeah, you know what? Why not? Yeah. Hello, everyone. It's time for another commentary track. This time, as you can see on screen, I'm going to be going through the entire Jenna solo for The Lost Age. And if you haven't been around before, how this is going to work is I'm going to take a look at every single video, talk about the fight itself, what went into setting things up, stuff like that. I'll probably also pull up the notepad documents I have with all of the routes listed on them, so I can look at those as we're going through the fight and see if there's anything in there that I want to talk a bit more about. Something that's going to be a little bit different from last time is this time I'm going to stop recording after I'm done talking about one boss, and then I'm gonna resume recording when it's time to talk about the next one. This is just for my own sake, because last time during the Aspel commentary track, something went wrong with OBS, so there was a really big desync that happened. Several seconds of audio just disappeared. Thankfully, none of what I said actually got lost, but some of the game footage had its sound just completely destroyed in one place. It wasn't even like there was silence, it just cut ahead a couple of seconds. So in order to avoid that, I'm gonna do these fights in parts, so to speak. It shouldn't be too noticeable for you guys once I edit everything together, but I'm just throwing it out there in case something seems inconsistent. Let's see. I should probably talk a little bit about the whole routing thing. That's been in the description of all of these videos. Maybe explain a little bit more what's going on there. So let me actually grab one of them real quick to show you. 1 second while I switch everything over. Okay, you should be able to see this now. So this is what a typical document of this type looks like for me. So to help you read everything, this thing at the top right here, these are all the Jin I used, and that's just so I can load a save state and see exactly what I should have set up in case the save state is different for whatever reason. And you can see there are a couple of different iterations here, and that's because sometimes that's just how these things go. Sometimes the RNG just isn't there, and there isn't a lot you can do to not die, which is probably what happened in the middle one here. You can see I do Pure Apply, Reflux, and then heal 2 turns in a row. Chances are I still died here from most likely Ocean Fist or something. So I believe this last one is the one that's actually in the video. And just some cursory information here for my eyes only. Level 44, that's the level Jenna is, so just by seeing the level there, when I load the save state, I can go into the status screen and see, okay, is Jenna level 44? If she is, I know I have the right state. And then just the Jin, as usual. And then it's really, really simple. This is a turn-by-turn action list, I guess. So turn 1, I use Steam. Turn 2, Trident. 3, Spring. 4, Char. Etc., etc., etc. And if I follow this route every single time I load that same state, that's an important factor. It has to be the same state. I can't just start a new file, let's say, get all the way up to Poseidon, do all of this in this exact order, and have it work. That's not a guarantee, that's not how this works. If it was that easy, that'd be kind of cool, actually. But I routed these on a state-by-state basis. And I also always made it clear, just for me, to put dead! Exclamation point to show when the boss actually dies from this. In other documents as well, I will also put if the boss drops an item or not, and that's just so I can display all the information about the spoils from the battle. So like the EXP, the money you get, and whatever item you happen to get. So if it doesn't say he drops anything, I know I can leave the game running just to allow, just to run the recording for a little bit more, so I have something to fade to black once I edit the video. I know I can just stay there once the coins have showed up, because I know there's not going to be anything else. And if I press A there, the battle screen's going to fade away. So that's basically how this worked. And whenever I would record, I would of course have this script off to the side on my second monitor, so I could always look at it and be sure to pick the right thing on the next turn. And in some fights this became a little bit tricky, because sometimes I have to do the same thing 3 turns in a row. Sometimes I just need to heal 3 times in a row. And at those stages it's very important to remember where exactly I am in the script, because if I heal myself only 2 times and then I keep going, it's not going to work, it's not going to line up. If I heal myself 1 time too many, so I heal myself 4 times in a row, well, it's not going to line up either. So I have to follow this very specifically in order to get the outcome I want. And this is of course by no means how you have to solo the game, it's just a happy little side effect that happened to come about from how I would prepare for the fights. So I would always leave a safe state in front, or like right before the fight, so I could retry really quickly. And as a result of that, the boss RNG would always be the same. Which meant, if I do the same thing every single time, I will get the same result. So it's just a happy little coincidence. I could just as easily have saved the game before the boss and then done a hard reset. But this seemed fun. It seemed like a nice challenge to try and route fights in interesting ways. Because one thing that people may have been unsure about is, well, is this like tool assisted, or are you predicting what the enemy is going to do? And to a certain extent, it is tool assisted, and to a certain extent, I am also predicting what the boss is going to do, because once it's time to record, I know how the fight is going to go. If I do the exact same thing every single turn, as I have written here in the document, I know what's going to happen. But don't think this is by any means easier, because it took a lot of time. Aqua Hydra, for example, I think I beat that the first time just just improvising, as you would when you're normally playing the game. And I think I killed him in about 15 minutes or so. It took a couple of attempts because I made stupid mistakes, but nevertheless, that wasn't a lot of time spent actually fighting the boss. Because how long is that fight, actually? Let me check. Oh, it's about 3 minutes, so I threw a couple of attempts at it. And chances are it turned out to be a lot longer when I was improvising anyway. But by doing this, it took around, I think, 2 to 3 hours, maybe even 4, just getting everything to line up, because I gave myself an extra restriction. I couldn't use synergy to heal myself, I had to use spring. So that was a fun little thing I could do. And I'll point out other such moments during the run when they come up. But for now, I think that's about everything I wanted to talk about before going into the fights, so let's just go. Give me a minute to switch everything over here. Alrighty, here we are, and we are ready to start watching all of the fights. As you can see here, this is my edited folder, as it's very subtly called up here. I have all of the bosses in the run, as well as a couple of extras that I'm going to show as part of this commentary track towards the end. These are all the bosses that I didn't release, so it's Valukar, Star Magician, and Sentinel. Because at the time I was under the impression that Dullahan wasn't possible to beat solo, or if he was possible, it was going to be extremely, extremely difficult. So I figured I'll leave that until some other time. That's normally how I do runs anyway, is I tend to focus on only the main bosses. but I'm gonna give Dullahan another try at some point. At which point you will probably see these uploaded on the channel. But for now, they're gonna stay here as an exclusive little extra bit at the end of this commentary track for you to enjoy. And like with anything, it makes sense to start at the beginning, so let's take a look at Chestbeaters. Just real quick before we get into this, at this point, I have no access to healing. I'm pausing now instead of letting the video run because the fight is really short. I have no access to healing at this time, since I'm not allowing myself to use items. The only Jin I have at this point is Echo, and Jenna's Venus class is Brute, I think it's called, which doesn't have any inherent healing. It's almost purely offensive. So the only thing I can hope for here is to just throw out my most powerful spell, which in this case is Flare Wall, and just hope I kill the Chestbeaters before they kill me. And the way that ended up going is they will buff themselves, heal themselves, and I get one dodge as well, which was pretty nice. So it's not terribly interesting from a strategic standpoint, because I'm just doing the same thing every turn until they die. But, what else could I have done, really, if I'm not allowing myself to heal? So yeah, let's take a look. And here they're gonna heal each other, I think. Yep. And there's the dodge I was talking about. There really isn't a lot to this fight if you're using Jenna. You just have to kind of power through it and hope they die, like they do here. A note about the menuing too, which might be confusing to some people. In Golden Sun 1 and 2, inputs in menus are mirrored, so to speak. So if you press right, you go to the right, but if you press down, you also go to the right. When it's the sideways menu. Like, this one. Oh, I'm so fucking fast. Doesn't even show up. In this one here, if I press right, I go to synergy. If I press down, I also go to synergy. So sometimes what you'll see me do is I'll almost instantly jump over to the Jin option. And when that happens, I'm pressing down and right in sequence, almost like a quarter circle input in a fighting game, like a Hadoken. So that's how that works. Most often, though, I misinput it, and I end up over at the summon icon instead, or the item icon. I think my controller is a little bit too spongy. It's a very old PS3 DualShock. So the D-pad has seen better days. It's pretty floppy. But yeah, I thought I should point that out. That's basically it for Chestbeaters, honestly. It's not a very difficult fight. Well, it can be very difficult if you're unlucky and they just hit you with everything. It took a couple of tries to get the RNG to be lining up to really allow me to kill them. I think it was nice to have a dodge in there that actually meant something too. So it's nice to hit one of those, I guess, mini goals very early on. That's kind of the unfortunate thing about Golden Sun. When you're in your default class, you are very, very, very limited. But on the flip side, it's also very easy to become incredibly overpowered if you have the right Jin setup. So at the start here, I'm not using any Jin because I lose access to a pretty good multi-hit spell if I do use Echo. I do, however, end up using Jin when fighting King Scorpion here. This one actually existed in two different versions. The first one, which was the one I went with for, I think, the majority of the recording process before I went back and redid it, was using Breath and Blitz. So what Breath does, if you don't know, is it's a healing Jin, so it finally gives me some access to healing, and Blitz deals damage. And they're both Jupiter Djinn, so I can summon Atalanta when both of them are on standby, which is pretty nice. Deals a pretty nice amount of damage. But I had a pet favorite strat before then that I thought could work, and it was using just 2 Venus Djinn without healing. Because I found out King Scorpion is actually very reliant on pure physical damage. Its regular attack is physical damage, Twin Shear also does physical damage, so if you use Iron to buff up your defense, his options are going to be very limited when it comes to actually dealing big amounts of damage to you. And then of course I use Echo to deal some intermittent damage, and then Ramses, as well as Planet Diver. So let's just take a look at how that turned out. This is of course the version that was uploaded with the 2 Venus Djinn. I don't think I have the Jupiter one still around, but that's fine. It's less interesting. That's one of the many strategies that a recording process like this allow, is you can just do stupid things, which is highly entertaining. Okay, let's watch King Scorpion. Starting off with a Planet Diver here, which deals almost 100 damage, which is quite a lot for this stage of the game. As you can see there, I jumped over too far and hit the item menu instead of the Djinn menu. Iron is now set up, and you can see he starts dealing very little damage. I defend here because I know Sand Breath is coming to cut that damage by half. Twin Shear is also completely neutered now. I found out that I could get Dreamtide to proc here, as well as the sleep effect. So, interestingly, certain bosses in these games are actually weak to status ailments, and King Scorpion just happens to be susceptible to sleep. So he has a bigger chance of being put to sleep, which is a secondary effect of Dreamtide, which is pretty neat. Doesn't last for long though, but I do get a free Planet Diver off. And he can also defend, which cuts any damage he receives in half on that turn. You can see why I'd want to defend a Desert Gasp there. I don't know what I was doing there, I thought I pressed A probably. Going into the status menu there was entirely an accident. It doesn't affect the RNG at all. Finish him off with Fume. A lot of that fight is just making sure I get a good amount of damage in whenever my Jenna are recovering as well. That's why I use Fume there. And also defending on certain key turns. I think I end up defending on 1 or 2. Just to cut some of the damage down. Because as you can see there, if I hadn't defended that first Desert Gasp, I would have been dead long ago. But Planet Diver doing stupid amounts of damage. Fume is also quite strong for this stage of the game. And Iron just kind of neutering 2 of his most popular options is quite nice indeed. So this is one of the favorites for me. I think it's a pretty interesting way to fight the boss. Heavily dependent on the kind of routing thing though. Because I tried this multiple times before. I tried this a lot before eventually settling on the dual Jupiter setup with Breath and Blitz. And I just couldn't quite get it to work, but I had a feeling it could, so I came back to it a lot later, and lo and behold, it works. I don't think there are any major statistical differences either between those two. I think I'm roughly around the same level and stuff. I might be a little bit higher here. I should also point out I am doing the bosses in sort of the canonical order. I think you can technically do Ares Rock before you do King Scorpion. If maybe you do the retreat glitch or something, I'm not entirely sure how that works. And you can of course do Briggs before doing Ares Rock as well, but I did Briggs after Ares Rock. That's sort of how I view the game should canonically be played. You should finish up everything you can do in the desert region and Garo, get all the stuff from there, and then go back to Al-Hafra. That's just a quick little note. I did try fighting Briggs before going to Ares Rock, though, and it did not go well. It's a very difficult fight. And speaking of Briggs, we should probably watch that one next. A note about Briggs here is he has items that he can use. He has a couple of signal whistles that will summon minions. And the minions themselves also have a couple of items that they can use. Most importantly, they have oil drops. They have one each, the minions. And once they've used it, of course, they can't use it again. So a very bad idea would be to wait for a minion to use its oil drop, kill it, so Briggs can summon another one that then has a new oil drop. That's a lot of damage you're putting against yourself, so that's something I wanted to avoid with this fight. So basically what that meant was I had to split my damage out and try to kill them all at the same time. I didn't have to do that, of course. I could have just focused down Briggs entirely and kill him off first, but I figured, hey, you know what? Killing all of them at the same time would be pretty cool, so I'm going to try and go for that. So let's take a look. Most of my single target damage ends up going into Briggs anyway, because he has the most health, so he needs to be brought down a lot more than the other two in order to set up for the multi-kill at the end. Occasionally I will use Blitz and Cutting Edge on the minions to bring them down a little bit so they can start to get whittled down by the residual damage coming in from Jupiter. As far as actions go, I believe they mostly do regular attacks and Echo Cut once they don't have any items. As you can see, the oil drop came in there and did like 70 damage, which is quite a lot, so that's not good. And there's another one. So now both the oil drops are off the field, so that's a very good thing. Dilution wears off, but it doesn't matter because I'm not going to end up regular attacking much anyway. A note about Dilution, for those that don't know, Dilution only affects regular attacks. It does nothing against Synergy or Jin. This is where I start to go into the Mercury-based setups, so I can have access to healing, and that's a trend I will stick to for most of the game. For solos, Mercury Jin and Mercury setups are just really good, because they tend to put you in classes, at least for Isaac and Jenna, they tend to put you in classes that have good defensive stats, which is always good. Like you can see, I'm taking around 1 to 3 damage from the regular attacks here, and a lot of that is thanks, I believe, to the class I'm in. It also gives me near constant access to healing, which is incredibly important in a solo, because all of the actions the enemies do will go directly into you. Say for example, all 3 of them decided to do Echo Cut on the same turn, I would take around 90 damage, which is quite a lot. Briggs also has an oil drop, I believe. But I'm pretty sure bosses use items on... Let me pause real quick. Bosses use items as a priority list, so since he technically has an oil drop, I think he can't use it because he has unused signal whistles still in his inventory. So he can't actually get to them. Which is very handy for me, because that means I no longer run the risk of taking 210 damage on one turn. Which is a nice weight to not have on your shoulders. Briggs very intent on defending here. Defended 3 times in a row. I'm just softening him up with some regular attacks. And Mad Blast for the triple kill. As you can see from my health total and my remaining PP, that fight could not have gone on a lot longer. I think I had enough for... I think Pi is like... Let me go back and look, actually. I think it's around 4 PP. If I could stop menuing so fucking fast. Well, it's very hard to tell, but... It's almost there. Almost had it. 4, okay. And then Mad Blast took 9 of that, so... Yeah, it would have been pretty close. Quite a fun fight. Well, it was a fun fight once everything was routed out. This one actually took quite a long time to get done. I think I spent about 2 or 3 days on this one. I first started out just immediately after King Scorpion, just seeing what I could do. And I pretty quickly came to the conclusion that, I think I'm going to need more stuff for this. Let me go to Ayers Rock real quick. And then I came back, and it wasn't too bad. Pretty fun. Okie dokie, let's move on and take a look at Aqua Hydra. This boss is also susceptible to an ailment, and I'm pretty sure it's stun. I think it happens a couple of times in the fight. Using a Mars setup here, because Tiamat is a beast, and this thing is very weak to Mars things. Also because I had the restriction of only using Spring to heal here, I don't really need all that many Mercury Djinn. Defending there, and Raging Flood still did 62 damage, so that would have done around 120 damage, which is it's pretty yikes. They also, because I'm only allowing myself to heal with Spring here, it does mean I have to manually set it. Because summoning Mercury will do some extra damage, yeah, not a lot. But it also lets me get Spring back faster, because I then don't have to wait for the recovery period. And I thought that was worth... sacrificing a turn to manually set it. Of course, with the routing, I could make sure that happened on good turns. Yeah, other than that, this fight is actually pretty simple once it's all routed out. It's just rotating the Mars Djinn I'm using. Sometimes using Kirin if I can't commit to using 3 of the Djinn. And using Spring whenever I can. crit there, which sucks a little bit. I don't know why I hesitated there. I think I just lost my place in the script, being like, wait, am I actually supposed to do this now? Or what am I supposed to do here? Defending so I can get some Jin back. Char for a stun. That was planned. I had to make sure that would actually happen, so I could get that little finisher. And I actually end up leveling up from that fight, which I believe is the only time that actually happened in the run. Not that it matters much, mind you. If that final stun hadn't happened, or if it couldn't happen, sometimes it just doesn't happen, I would have gone with a different solution. I would have just laid more damage into him some other way. But I figured, hey, if I can get a stun, keep myself at really low health, and then finish off with a level 1 summon, I will absolutely take that opportunity. So yeah, it was a lot of work, many hours spent routing this one, for just under 3 minutes of content, but hey, I think it's pretty entertaining as a result. I'm also just now noticing it looks like the handle on Felix's axe is actually going above his head there. That's... possibly a layering issue from the emulator. I don't know. Moving on to Serpent. I'm gonna pause right at the start here again because there's actually a big difference in boss behavior coming up for basically the rest of the run. This is where bosses start attacking twice per turn. So while Serpent's stats I don't think necessarily are super duper high compared to previous bosses, the fact that it can attack twice a turn and really put a lot more damage into you ends up making the fight so much more difficult. As well as I said before, I'm fighting the bosses in the canonical fashion, so while you can technically fight the Serpent the first time you find it in Gaia Rock, the canonical way to do it is to go around the dungeon and light all these orbs, which will weaken the Serpent even more. If you don't light all 4 of them, the Serpent can act 3 times per turn, which is a lot for a solo. That issue ends up coming up with Doom Dragon, but at that point you're a little bit more well-equipped to deal with it. The boss also recovers a different amount of health each turn, depending on how many lights you have on it. It's an almost impossible amount of health with all 4 when none of them are lit. Now, there are strategies to kill him that way, but I think that almost requires a full party. Unless you just completely out-level this boss, which I didn't want to do. I wanted to fight it in the canonical way. So that's how I ended up doing this. The one exception to this is Moapa, which is a bit later. If you remember, you have to do the Trial Road, which is basically this game's version of Colosso, where you have to go through a couple of puzzle rooms, and if you get to the end of a room first, you only have to deposit 1 item into the boxes at the end. But if Moapa clears a room first, you have to put 2 items in. This cuts down your stats a lot, and canonically what ends up happening if Moapa wins is, well, he ends up giving up less equipment, so he's stronger as a result. And I thought that could be a nice challenge. So I let Moapa win every single room. That comes up a little bit later though, so let's watch this one first. Reflux ends up becoming kinda useful here. It's normally not worth going for if a boss can only attack once, but in a solo, you can basically guarantee that you'll get at least 2 activations a turn. Which is pretty nice. It ends up doing more damage than you would just have gotten from a singular Jin. A regular attacking Jin, I mean. So Reflux not terribly useful in party play, because you can't guarantee the person you're putting stuff on actually gets attacked a lot. But in a solo, it's very, very controllable. So Reflux ends up being actually quite useful throughout the run. I'm also going with a Mars-based setup here. I can't exactly remember why. I do know the Serpent's resistances favor Venus. I think Mars is probably one of the higher resistances, but figured, hey, why the hell not? It lets me use Reflux, which is cool. And I can still maintain access to all of my healing by doing this, which is quite nice. Mighty Press, as you saw earlier, has a chance to put you at 1 health, I believe. Let me actually look that up real quick before I embarrass myself. Never mind, I was thinking of another attack. Ocean Fist, that Poseidon has an ability to put you at 1 health. Mighty Press has a chance to just outright kill you, so me living with 1 health there was entirely luck. Moving on. It does have the ability to heal as well. Thankfully it's Cure instead of Ply, which has lower innate healing as it is, so 135 health on top of the existing 30 health he gets back every turn is pretty negligible, honestly. It's not too bad. Interesting fact people might not know is that healing is based off of your elemental power. So if you use a Mercury summon while you have Ply available, Ply will actually heal more after the elemental boost. Reflux doing more work here. Obviously, every Mighty Press is a little bit scary, because it does have the chance to instantly kill me. And that was the problem while routing. It's not something you're going to see in the video, obviously, but he likes using it a lot, which is not fun. It's always scary when you're routing a fight where instant kill is a factor. He just loves using Mighty Press. Twice in a row. Cool. Very fun. Why use Pure Ply instead of Ply Well is another question that could prop up when you're watching these, because Pure Ply has a very high base healing. Honestly, it's just to ensure that I end up at max health most of the time. It also has a fun little ticking clock element to the fight, because it costs more TP than... not TP. PP than Plywell. I believe there are times when I opt to use Plywell instead. But I think those moments are few and far between. Okay, on to Avimander. Or Avimander, or however you say that. We're almost halfway through. Well, not technically, because we have these as well, but that's for later. Avimander. This one also took a very long time to do, I remember. Because this is the first boss where stun really becomes a problem for you. And it's a very powerful ability all on its own, Starmine. Which really doesn't help. Using guard a couple of times, which is going to cut into the damage I do, but there's nothing really I can do about that. The overall damage coming in per turn is quite high. Oh yeah, Heat Stun is the one that can stun you. Starmine deals damage similarly to a summon, so it actually has a like damage modifier that's based on your max health. I believe it's 30% of your max health. On top of the base damage, which is exactly how summons work. The Starmine is quite a powerful move. And I get stunned here. While I'm stunned, there's absolutely nothing I can do. I just have to take the punishment and then respond later, as I do here. I remember this fight being a pain to route, having to deal with stun. But at the same time, I also wanted myself to get stunned, because it accurately reflects what would happen if you just did this fight normally. You probably would get stunned, and you'd stay stunned for a while, and you'd probably die. This becomes more of a factor with Valukar, since he has like 3 attacks he can do or something like that. And one of them can stun you. He loves using that. He can stun you while you're stunned, which is cool. Get stunned again. I believe the longest time I've been stunned while doing attempts and routing against any boss is, I think, 5 turns in a row? Or 4? Which is quite a lot of time to spend just getting hammered. As you can imagine, there's not a lot you can do to really counter that. If you get stunned, you get stunned. And you're not getting out of it until the game allows you to. Which brings up a question, were there ever any points where I picked a specific action to avoid a certain outcome? And definitely. There totally were. There are times where I maybe do a regular attack, or defend when it looks strange to do so. And that's most likely because if I hadn't, something really bad would have happened. But most of the time, I am responding to the situations the boss puts me in. I get stunned again. I believe I have an item equipped that has an HP regen function. Can't remember what it is, but it's listed in the description of the Avimander fight, if you want to go check it out. And I believe I equipped that specifically just to get health back progressively every turn, so I could get something out of being stunned. I don't know if it actually ended up saving me at any point, but for my mental health and my anxiety, it was nice to know that, okay, at least I'm getting something out of this turn, and not just sitting there being stunned and taking punishment. Moving on to Poseidon. This is also where I didn't really have to break the no items rule, because I stated as an exception that you have to use the trident against Poseidon, otherwise you can't damage him. So this was completely necessary. And it is the one part in the run where an item is used. So I think it's fine. Poseidon then he's a bit of a wall, normally, for casual play. I remember getting stuck against this guy for a long time when I was a kid. Probably says more about my gaming skills as an adolescent than the boss, but he is quite difficult. This boss is actually quite different compared to others in the way he picks what he's going to do. Normally bosses have one command list, and they just pick something at random from that list. Everything has a certain chance of being picked, like out of 256. So say, just as a purely random example that probably doesn't exist, say Avimander uses Flame Breath 50 out of 256 times. That turns out to be a certain percentage. I'm bad at math. So then you can rely on him probably using that attack that percentage of the time, out of 256 different rolls, of course. The way Poseidon does things, he actually has 2 command lists. And he has 1 command list for every action per turn. So he has 2, as I said. He acts twice, by the way. So on the first action of his turn, for every turn, he will pick something from the first list and use that. On the second action, he'll pick something from the second list. He will never pick something from the second list on his first turn, on his first action per turn, and vice versa. So this can actually be kind of nice, because then you know, okay, at least I'm not getting slammed with 2 powerful moves from his second list, because that's impossible. I know he's going to use 1 from each list. So that's an interesting little difference. And that might have been so he could actually use Counter Rush and have it mean something, because it's used with priority as his first action. And maybe they didn't want him to potentially pick Counter Rush twice or something, or use that on his first action and then use something really strong on his second action, or vice versa. I don't know. I'm rambling at this point. Let's just take a look at Poseidon. Most dangerous attacks this guy has are Ocean Fist, which can put you at 1 health, as I said. And I believe it's called a Watery Grave, which has a chance to instantly kill you. 2 effects that are not very desirable at all. So I start off with Steam to get my resistances up, and then I use the Trident. This is partially because I knew he was going to do Counter Rush on the first turn, so I can save myself a little bit of damage by using Steam first and not attacking him, and then using the Trident on the second turn. Should double check, actually. Hang on. Okay. I thought for a second maybe he used Counter Rush on the second turn as well. Got distracted by myself talking. Yeah, so Watery Grave is quite dangerous, as it can kill you outright. That was a big pain to try and route around, as well as Ocean Fist. I believe Ocean Fist is also part of the first move list, so it is entirely possible for him to do that first and then attack you normally. Yeah, so there's Ocean Fist on turn 1. If that had put me at 1 health there, and he did Typhoon Blow here, I would have just died. There was nothing I could have done about that. Even though my health even though I had a lot of health. So that's something you just kind of have to deal with this guy. The reason I'm using Ulysses here is because that's just what I used when I played the game as a kid. I figured, hey, this is pretty nostalgic for me. I believe Tiamat does more damage and takes less time to set up, but if I can introduce more pain-in-the-ass variables to a fight, I will do it. I should also say from here on out, the boss lengths tend to go up. They start to become pretty long towards the end. So during the parts where I don't really have anything to say, I'll probably speed things up, just to keep the video length down, because Doom Dragon is going to be around... That fight is already over 20 minutes as is. And with pausing and extra talking, that could easily become like 50 minutes. I don't know if it's obvious, but this commentary track is obviously not meant to be a first viewing of this run. This is something you should watch after you've already seen it, if you want extra input and stuff like that. If I remember right, there is a point where Ocean Fist actually puts me at 1 health, but he ends up healing instead on turn 2. Some mercury-resistant gear would have been really nice to have here. I don't know if I have any equipped right now. There is a really strong armor that's unfortunately endgame, which at that point it doesn't really protect you against much, since not a lot of the bosses use any mercury things after that point. But it gives you like... It gives you a lot of both mercury power and resistance. That's the thing I have on for the Doom Dragon fight. And yeah, there's the Ocean Fist into Plywool thing I was talking about. Very scary. But if I can route something like that to happen and then get myself out of that situation, that's pretty entertaining, I think. So if opportunities like that arise, I will take them. I end up using Steam in a lot of my Mercury setups, because having just an extra little bit of resistance protecting you over the turns is actually quite nice. It's an extra 40, which is quite a lot. That's half of her base resistances for a lot of the elements. She always ends up having slightly higher Mercury resistance because she has Mercury Djinn on her. So I am technically taking less damage here than I should be, compared to if I had just gone with a mono Mars setup. And I believe he's dead here. Or maybe not. He's dead. Cool. Bosses just keep getting more and more difficult to route from here on out, basically. I was stuck on this guy for a couple of days as well. It just took some time finding a strategy that worked, and also getting it to a point where I was happy with it. I think I did a good job. Going on to Moapa, the guy I was talking about with the extra stats and whatnot. Let me actually pull up my stats dump real quick. Let me see here how much their stats actually change. So yeah, it's mainly their defense stats, because of course they're getting rid of less equipment. That's the story reason why they get stronger. So Moapa here has 219 defense, as compared to 120 if you had finished every single room before them. And the Knights also have 151 as compared to 106. And I believe they also become more likely to use strong hits if they finish one room before you. Yeah, they do. Okay. So I made this fight a little bit more difficult. Why? Because, well, it's normally not that hard. This is actually kind of a joke fight, because, well, it's basically like Briggs, but way later into the game, so it's not nearly as threatening. However, there is one special thing about this fight that doesn't crop up that often during the run. And that's that everyone is forced alive when you enter this place, and there's no way to kill them off before you get up here. Because once you enter Trial Road, you can't leave. And every time you enter Trial Road, even if you were to somehow leave using walk through walls or something like that, you would get a full heal. So while it would probably be possible to warp up here with the debug codes to do so, I just decided to keep everyone alive to keep it a true experience to how the game would normally pan out. So what I have to do at the start of this is to fail summons. And this goes against the... Well, it doesn't really go against the no preset Jin rule, because I stated in the description for every video that there are exceptions to this. I'm only allowed to set Jin before a battle starts, or put Jin on standby, rather, if I'm going to use them to fail summons. I am then not allowed to use those Jin for anything else for the rest of the fight. So that's what we're going to see here. Everyone is alive. I believe everyone except Jenna has gotten rid of all of their equipment. That's just so they will die faster. Until Jenna is the only one standing, I am not allowed to do anything meaningful. And meaningful is what I've defined meaningful as doing something that actually has an effect in battle. So I wouldn't be allowed to defend with everyone, because defending actually makes you take less damage. But failing a summon does absolutely nothing. It's, as far as I know, the only do-nothing command in the game. So that's what I use to kill everyone off. I also do that for the Karst and Agatio fight, which we will get to a bit later. After this one, actually. But let's watch Moapa first. So I'm just gonna fail summons here and wait for them to be killed off. And I am, of course, not allowed to heal Jenna at all during this fight, until everyone is dead. So I also took off the piece of equipment that heals Jenna passively for 10 health every turn, because that would be something meaningful. Just making sure I do as little as possible. And they end up going down pretty quickly. And for this one I took a different approach. Here I decided to keep Moapa until the end and kill off the goons, rather than kill them all at the same time. Just to switch things up a little bit compared to the Briggs fight. Also using poison here, which is pretty fun. I don't really get an opportunity to do that often. This is also the point where I started using Haze. Haze is an incredibly useful Jinny, because it is it's one of the very few Jin that actually allow you to completely ignore damage. The only other Jin that do this are Lull, which just that one just ends the turn. And since Jenna is so fast, she's gonna act before everyone else. So I can just use that to immediately end the turn if I want to. And against bosses that only act once, Ground and Petra can also do that, because they will prevent them from acting. So being able to completely avoid damage is obviously a very, very strong effect. And Haze is easily one of the best Jin in the game because of this. Especially in a solo setting. Against multiple targets like this, I can just evade so much damage. And still set up for summons, which is quite nice. Another missed input there. Going into the status menu there was completely unintentional. Running things out so I get spring back exactly when I need it. Fun little things like that. Kept this project from becoming all too stale. Choosing to make the minions the main targets of the summons, usually, to get to make sure they die. If I had Moapa as the main target there, I believe the knight wouldn't have died. And coming towards the end here, Moapa just kind of gives up. He gets a little sad when his friends die. Really not a lot to say here, because he's not too threatening on his own. And of course I had to do it to him. Finish off with a level 1 summon. Which is a pretty fun thing to do when it comes up. Also, nice. Good amount of health I had left there. Very cool. Moapa was kind of a breath of fresh air. Because after Briggs, the difficulty just kind of goes up and up and up, and then suddenly you have Moapa, where the difficulty kind of slows down a little bit, and then there's Karst and Agatio, where the difficulty spikes again, then it's Flame Dragons, where it goes back down, and then it's Doom Dragon, where the difficulty just goes into the stratosphere. Speaking of Karst and Agatio, let's take a look at that one now. So this fight actually starts out with just Felix and Pierce, which that's okay. I am obviously not allowed to do anything meaningful with anyone except Jenna, and Jenna has to be the only one left alive at that point, so I'm going to spend these first couple of turns just failing summons as normal. Pierce goes down. I believe you have 2 turns before Jenna shows up, and then after she shows up, you have 2 turns before Sheba shows up. So even though Felix and Pierce die here on turn 2, that doesn't actually speed up Jenna coming back. That's just a coincidence. It's nice though, because it means I can start doing stuff as soon as Jenna comes back. So I will now have 2 turns to use before Sheba comes in and I have to start failing summons again. I'm going to start by using Steam. Get my resistances up a little bit. Here I'm also going to shoot for a double kill, which is probably a really bad idea, but hey, why not? Makes things a little bit more difficult. Normally, like with Satros and Minardi in the first game, you'd probably want to take out Karst first, because she has Death Scythe, which can kill you. And, or maybe you'd want to take out Agatio first, actually, because he's way stronger. Yeah, nothing to do but keep failing summons until Sheba's dead. And they're gonna take their sweet time doing so. Interesting thing, actually, if we go back here to where I start failing summons again, notice how I have 2 Mercury Djinn on standby. Obviously, that's not enough to summon Neptune. So that one's marked as red, as it should be. But then Nereid is also marked as red. And it takes 2 Mercury Djinn. But I have 2 Mercury Djinn. So even though Nereid is red here, I can't use it. Because if I do, the summon will go through. I think this is a programming oversight. The game doesn't actually check to see, oh, you still have Djinn left. It just sees, ah, you're using free Mercury Djinn to summon Neptune. Cool, perfect. And then the game goes, well, you don't have any Mercury Djinn left, so you can't summon Nereid. But I can. So I had to make very certain that I pick Neptune here, otherwise Sheba's going to do damage, and that is not allowed. It even says it right up here, I noticed. Right there it says I have 0 Djinn, which obviously isn't true, because this thing up here still says 2. So I believe this one just preemptively checks for how many Djinn you've used so far that turn, so it sees that, oh, you've used 2 Djinn, you have none left, even though I fail a summon that requires 3. Things like that you have to watch out for. Okay, Sheba's now dead, then I can start acting. With 112 health to go. She's gonna use Death Scythe a lot, which I'm noticing is actually spelled correctly in this game. And that does have a chance to instantly kill you, which sucks. It obviously doesn't happen in the video, or else this video wouldn't have made it up. But it is something you do have to deal with when you're routing. So what I'm going to do here, basically, is I'm going to start summoning Boreas, and I'm going to be swapping the main target back and forth to keep the damage evenly spread. Agatio has more health than Karst, so he's going to be the main target of my Jin, I believe. He's going to take the single target damage, and then I'm going to split the area damage evenly between the two. As you can see, yeah, she's very fond of using Death Scythe. I don't think I had to specifically avoid a Death Scythe at any point. I think it just never triggered. Got pretty lucky with that one. Healing Aura seems like it'd be annoying, because it heals both of them, but it only heals for, like, 105. It's the base version of the spell. Where is it? Is the first one just called Aura, and then it's Healing Aura, and then Cool Aura? I actually can't remember. Wish is better, anyhow, so... Stun Muscle can obviously stun you, but I don't think it ever does. Probably had to defend here for a very specific reason. I likely would have died if I hadn't. Because if I defend, they will do something else. They won't do whatever they had planned. If I'd done another action there, so... That's what I was talking about earlier. If it ever seems like I'm doing something strange, like defending there when she used Fiery Blast and he used Cage, doesn't seem like something you'd want to defend against, but that's because if I'd done something else, I would have been hit with something completely different. I also have to be careful not to select Eclipse there, because that's going to be at the top of the menu, because it realizes, hey, you have enough Jin to summon this, but I can't. I'm not allowed to use the Jupiter Jin that are set to Shenmue. I can only use whatever Jenna has. Cage also blocks your synergy, so it's very important to not get hit by that. I think it does that anyway. Or it might be the one that prevents you from moving. I'm gonna look that up while this rolls, hang on. There's a lot of stuff to keep in mind for these videos. Oh yeah, Cage is the one that just keeps you from acting, but since Jenna acts first, it's never gonna work. It's exactly like... is it Gravity Force that Doom Dragon has? Earth Force, yeah. So whenever he uses that, that's a very good thing to see, because I know for a fact nothing's gonna happen from him on that turn. Which means that's gonna be a turn when I'm not getting hit by Rising Dragon, for example, which is stupidly powerful. Even though I had enough Jin for Boreas there, I chose to go with Shade, because I'm pretty sure I would have died otherwise. Or if not, I would have been put in a very bad position. It also technically doesn't hurt, because it means I'm gonna be able to summon Boreas, maybe not faster than, like faster the next time, but it is gonna let me, kind of keep on curve, I guess. I'm still spending the same amount of turns, so it doesn't really matter. And I believe Boreas, or like summons in general, they take the Jin in the order they were used, so Shade should still be on standby. Yep. Living with extremely low health there. And again, I'm always happy to route in situations where I am put at very, very low health. Makes things a little exciting. And here towards the end I'm spreading out my damage. You can tell I'm focusing Karst a lot now too. Because this Boreas is going to kill them both. This is technically an optional win, you don't have to win this. So I am once again kinda going against the canonical thing, because canonically you are supposed to lose. But I figured, hey, if I skip these guys, we're never going to get to see the antagonists again. Well, in their human forms, I mean. The next boss are the same people, it's just this dragons. Spoiler alert, if you haven't played this incredibly old game by now. Alright, moving on to Flame Dragon then. Or Flame Dragons, even. Plural. Alright, here we go. A couple of things have changed. Their health totals have gone up, of course. Both of them now have Flame Breath. Karst no longer has Death Scythe, which is the smaller dragon to the right there. So she's left one of her, maybe not useless moves, it is useless in the sense that if routed correctly, it's never gonna kill you. But it does mean she now has more attacks that deal more damage to you, which is a bit of a pain. And Jenna is gonna get some PP back every turn here, because this fight takes place in the Mars Lighthouse. Which is in essence gonna grant me around basically infinite PP, I believe, because very rarely I'm gonna have to spend multiple turns in a row healing and stuff like that. And even if I do, I'll probably have Spring available. Jinfest is still kind of a pain, because it just automatically puts Jin in recovery that I might want to use. Oh yeah, the reason I'm using Isaac, Ivan, and Mia as opposed to the Lost Age cast here is entirely because they're lower level, so they're faster to kill off in preparation for fights. That's the only reason. There was something else I had to say about this fight. I'm gonna take a look at my notes real quick. Whoops. Maybe I didn't have anything to say after all. My attack getting dropped sucks. Guess it means Jin will deal less damage. But I'll take that over an instant kill attack any day of the week. She still had Heat Kiss in the previous fight. Oh yeah, I have Masamune equipped here, I forgot about that. So here and there, when the route allows for it, I will opt for regular attack, if it will proc Rising Dragon, of course. Meteor Blow, I believe, also has the damage modifier that acts based on your max health, because I've noticed it does a lot of damage. Yeah, whenever I see Cage, that's a good thing. Damage coming in is still very high. I'm quite often put into lower classes during this fight because I need to put a lot of Jin on standby in order to summon Boreas. And then on top of that, Karst keeps using Jinfest, putting even more into recovery. But that's okay, they come back pretty quickly. And she can't really put me in a position where I don't have healing. I have too many Mercury Jin set for that. That is a lot of damage, yeah. Wow. One of them goes down. Again, just to keep things different from the previous fight. We can end up using Cutting Edge and regular attacks a lot here. That might also have looked strange using Nereid there instead of setting up for a stronger summon, but I really wanted the Rising Dragon finisher, just for the flavor. So well, that dragon head in the background is really distracting. Flame Dragons is it's a pretty fun fight. It's maybe not as fun as Karst and Agatio, because at that point you're so much weaker. And obviously it's a fight you're meant to lose, so they could really kind of go all out with how difficult they were, but then this one is a boss you have to kill. So there's that. I had a lot of fun with this one. I think I got stuck here, actually, for a little bit, just because they have so much damage coming in. And this was obviously towards the tail end of the run. At this point, I didn't know if I was going to do Doom Dragon or not. I was leaning towards not doing it, because I didn't think it was possible. That obviously wasn't true. So I spent a lot of time trying to get this one to be as good as it could be, because at the time this was recorded, this was supposed to be the end of the run. So I wanted it to be a little special, I guess. Alright. Oh, it's time for the big boy, Doom Dragon. Oh man. I just made myself laugh because I looked over at my notes and I noticed it says the big motherfucker of the series next to Dullahan, and that really is true. This guy is incredibly strong and very, very, very difficult. The main reason for this, or one of the main reasons rather, because there are many, and we'll get to them, is Gin Blast. Normally with a full party, even with 2 full parties as you would have at this point, Gin Blast isn't all that problematic. It puts every Jin on one character in recovery mode, which sucks, but hey, you have 3 others. That's cool. Not so much in a solo. That thing is always going to target you if he uses it. And there's, well, you can prevent it, of course, as I'll show you. But it's not fun to get hit by it. You can get by with getting Gym Blasted in phase 1, because the damage he does to you at that point is very, very low compared to the other stages. But getting hit with Gin Blast in phase 2 or phase 3, that's basically a game over unless you get incredibly lucky. And especially so with Jenna, because, oops, all her Jin are gone. I have no healing, and I'm not going to have healing for a lot of turns. So that's obviously not good. And then once you do get to phase 2 and 3, the other big thing you have to watch out for is Cruel Ruin, which deals damage based on your max health as well, on top of like 200 base Venus damage. And Venus damage, by the way, is Jenna's worst resistance. Not by a lot, mind you. It's by like 1 point compared to Jupiter, I believe. But it's low, right? It's not up there. It's not as high as her base Mars resistance, and it's also not as high as the Mercury resistance she ends up having in this fight, because I have a lot of Mercury Jin set. I also have Triton's... is it Triton? Triton? Who knows? Triton... Ariel's dad in The Little Mermaid. I have his clothes on, Triton's ward, which gives me a lot of Mercury power and Mercury resistance. So my Mercury res is actually quite high. Not that it matters, because Doom Dragon doesn't attack with Mercury attacks. It has mainly Venus and Mars attacks. And Jenna actually doesn't have any equipment that boosts her Venus resistance. That's all found in stuff she can't equip. So that's fun. But there are ways to circumvent that as well. One Cruel Ruin, if you're at full health, is not going to kill you. But he could do something on his first action, and then hit you with Cruel Ruin, and then you might die. You are very likely to die in a single turn, is what I'm getting at. And there's basically no counterplay, unless you route things out, of course. And speaking of the route for this one, it is incredibly tight. It is to the point where I noticed if I accidentally hit the A button one too many times when selecting my target, Doom Dragon would do something completely different. And that's the reason it took so long to actually record the fight, because it took me a good while before I even noticed that was a problem. I thought, well, I'm doing everything the same. Why isn't he following the route as I am? And that turns out, I think, it's the only explanation I've been able to find, because I was hitting the button too many times. And I actually tested that out as well. There were certain points where that seemed to be like points of failure. So say there's a turn where I use Fizz, and I hit the A button the exact amount of times I need to just make it go off, right? He follows the route as he's supposed to. He does what he's supposed to. And then in another take, I accidentally hit the A button once, like one too many times. He immediately does Gin Blast. And this was not like a one-time thing, this was consistent. So I had to play this fight extremely carefully, which made the fight a little bit longer. I'm not doing nearly as much like menu gliding, as it's called, where I did the quarter circle input to go across multiple selections at once. I am playing things very slowly, very deliberately, because if I don't, who knows, maybe he's going to break free from the route, and then I'm going to have to spend another 15 minutes getting back to where I currently was. So that's why possibly the fight turned out to be a little bit longer than usual. It also doesn't help that Doom Dragon acts like 3 times per turn, often with attacks with very long animations. It is just a long fight in general. Another thing to point out is, while Doom Dragon has 3 separate phases, one for each head, so there's the first one where it has all 3 heads, then 2 heads, and then finally 1 head. They're treated as different enemies. So, say for example, phase 1 with all 3 heads has 400 health left, let's just say. And I summon Boreas, and it does 1000 damage. Phase 2 then doesn't start off with 600 less health. Phase 1 just dies, and then the second version comes in with full health regardless of the amount of damage. Regardless of the amount of extra damage I technically did. This also means that summons tend to do a little bit less damage against Doom Dragon because its individual health totals are actually quite low. With all heads, it has 5000 health, which is less than the small dragon from Flame Dragons, I believe. Let me see. Yeah. And then in the second and third phases, the health goes down to 4,200, and then 4,000 for the last phase. Those are actually quite low health totals. They're very low for a final boss, but put together, it's a lot of health. But you're not going up against all that health at once. So summons tend to do a lot less damage, which, of course, means the fight takes a little bit longer. What's nice about that, though, is if I kill a phase, the turn immediately ends, and it goes back to, well, the start of the fight, basically. A new fight just starts. So I know for a fact that, okay, this is going to kill, so I can take a risk here and do something without healing right now, because I know I can get a heal off next turn, when the second phase starts, or when the third phase starts, or whatever. So I end up doing that a lot. Alright, before we jump into this, I just started a new recording, because this is going to take a while. Let me also show you real quick the route I had for this fight. So this is how, I showed you one of these at the start, but this is how they can also look. So here, for example, it says F5 state. I know, okay, if I press F5 when the emulator is up, it's going to load that state. And when it says run straight up, that's just an information for me to follow as soon as I load the state. This will work eventually. Take it slow. And that's true. I took it extremely slow, and it did work eventually. I think what ended up happening that made actual recording attempts fail was because when I was routing the fight, I was always fast-forwarding through Doom Dragon's actions just to speed things up. And then whenever I would select what to do as I was routing the fight, I would take it slow. I wouldn't rush my inputs because I didn't need to. So everything ended up working while I was fast-forwarding and stuff like that. So at first I thought, well, maybe fast-forwarding actually messes with what he's supposed to do, but it doesn't. So yeah, that was another thing I had to figure out. As you can see here, I've routed out all the specific different faces. And this is where it can get hard to read, especially when you start getting towards the end of one of these here, where you have to jump down and constantly remember where you are. Especially because Doom Dragon's actions, or Doom Dragon's turns rather, they take so long, it's easy to just dream yourself away, start thinking about something else, because this fight, as I said, is around 20 minutes. It's hard to keep focus for that long on something that isn't very engaging on a mechanical level. Especially when you've routed everything out and you know exactly what you're going to do. It's very easy to get complacent. I'm going to keep this up to the side here as we jump into Doom Dragon, and this is most likely where I'm going to have to start speeding things up whenever I'm not talking. So if you're interested in seeing the entire thing, I suggest you go do that now. YouTube has a built-in video speed thing. Use that if you want to. That's perfectly okay. This is a long fight, and it is a bit of a slog. So, yeah, let's just go. I used to love this song before working on this run, but now I've heard it for probably a total of 6 hours. It starts to get less good at that point. Oh yeah, Doom Dragon's first phase can actually act 4 times a turn, but a lot of those turns will be spent doing nothing, or using Psy Boost. Oh yeah, it can also inflict Haunt and Curse, which sucks a little bit. Haunt has a chance to deal damage to you whenever you deal damage to an enemy. Proportional to the amount of damage you dealt. So you can see I do 502 damage with Sour here, and I take 125. I'm pretty sure that's exactly a fourth of the damage I dealt, almost. Yeah. And Curse obviously kills you after a set amount of turns, so you have to get rid of that at some point. But there is usually room in the rotation for that, especially if you're using a Mercury setup, because you'll probably want to have Tonic. And if not, you have Restore to get rid of Curse, which I'll end up using later. With proper routing, you can make sure Haunt never activates at a bad time. But it is a good idea to get rid of it whenever you can. First phase, damage-wise, isn't too difficult. The main thing you're worried about here is, well, Blast Breath is kind of strong. And the Gym Blast, that's really the only thing you're worried about. Earth Force is exactly like Cage, so it does nothing if Jenna has already acted. I'm not min-maxing the Jin I bring. So I think there might be a Jin that deals more damage than Zurich, but I brought it just because I like it. The Jin that absolutely have to be here are Fist, Tonic, Spring, and Haze. Without them, this would be very, very difficult. Fist and Spring are very nice because they help you set up for Boreas, and they also give you more healing alternatives, which is very good. Tonic obviously gets rid of both Curse and Haunt, and Haze lets you dodge Gym Blast, which is always a good thing. So while Boreas did around 1000 damage there, he could have done a lot more if Doom Dragon's health total had been higher. I am also running at maxed Mercury Elemental power for the majority of this fight. It's very high just innately from all the Jin I have and my equipment. And then it obviously gets the extra boost from Boreas as well. Elemental power and elemental resistance both cap out at 200. So it's impossible to go above that and just keep doing damage and keep snowballing. Should be getting to the end of phase 1 here soon. I'm gonna do Sarek and Spring and then Boreas, and then he's gonna be dead. Oftentimes you'll find I'll keep Curse on me for as long as possible, just to maximize the amount of turns I don't need to like get rid of it. So often I'll have maybe 1 or 2 turns left before it kills me. That's partially also just to keep him from casting Curse on me again. Because I believe he won't cast Curse if you're already cursed. I know Dullahan does that. I don't know if that applies to other bosses as well. So I'm gonna do Tonic here. Partially because he uses Guard Aura, so any attack I throw at him will be reduced by 90%. Which really isn't anything I'm interested in throwing at him right now. It would just be a waste, so I'm gonna set up with Tonic. Get rid of Curse and Haunt, and there's Cruel Ruin, doing around 500 damage. I know I'm safe to use Steam here. Just gonna do Haunts. Basically, whenever he doesn't use Cruel Ruin, it's very welcome, because the damage will stay comparatively low. I think Serpent, Fume, and Briar, there together, did around 150 to 200 damage, I believe. I wasn't really paying attention. Compared to the 558 damage that Cruel Ruin did, and then compounded with all the other stuff you can do, it's still do in the same turn. So yeah, this part of the fight is basically, oh my god, I hope he doesn't use Cruel Ruin or Gem Blast. I use Haze here. I think to dodge Cruel Ruin. I will use it later in the fight to dodge Gem Blast as well. And that's just trial and error. Seeing basically, okay, what does he do on this turn? Does he use Gem Blast or something dangerous on this turn? Can I get away with using Haze here? It's just trial and error, really. I'm also using Moloch to put Haze into recovery so I can get it back to use it later. So while having a lot of max health might seem bad if Cruel Ruin deals damage based on your max health, it's actually kind of beneficial because you'll have a lot more health to play around with on the turns he doesn't use Cruel Ruin. So it can be quite worth it to have a lot of health. Yeah, so I'm taking every opportunity on turns where he uses Guard Aura to just set up stuff for myself. Gonna use Haste the next turn, I believe. If I'm following the scripts. Yes. Which probably means a Gem Blast is incoming. Yes, here we go. So yeah, Haste not only makes you take no damage, it just nullifies completely everything. It is such a strong effect. It's actually kind of ridiculous. Uses Guard Aura when I use Jupiter, which kind of sucks a little bit. It doesn't do that much damage anyway. It would have dealt like 100 or so. I'm doing that mainly just to put Haze into recovery. And I probably did that because manually setting Haze probably would have made him do something different. Which would probably have killed me, so Jupiter there was most likely the right decision. Now you can see I have 1 turn left before Curse is going to kill me, so I'm going to use Tonic here. I have completely lost my way in the route here, I don't know where we are. Possibly Fist coming up on the next turn. Hey, look at that. I'm gonna do haste next turn, possibly to dodge Gem Blast again. In a party setting, Cruel Ruin is devastating, yes, but it has moderate damage distribution, so it's really only going to own one of your characters. And the others won't take nearly as much damage. I'm dodging another Cruel Ruin here so I don't die. It's still incredibly strong, mind. It just won't deal its full damage to everyone, which is quite welcome. Especially later on in Phase 3 when he can put every Jin into recovery on every character. Luckily for a solo setting though, that doesn't really matter that much, because Jin Storm does the exact same thing as Gem Blast, because there's only one character alive anyway. I'm gonna cast Restore here to get rid of Curse. Because Tonic is still in recovery. Just came back down. Really loves putting Curse on you. It's a pain, because it's not something you have... It's nice, because when he does it... Or it does it, I don't even know. That's an action that's not spent doing something really dangerous, like Gem Blast or Cruel Ruin. But it also means you're gonna have to waste a turn later on, so it kinda evens out. We are now just over halfway. More than halfway, even. Almost 800 damage on that one. You can see why Cruel Ruin really is the biggest motherfucker of a move. It's very, very strong. Getting to the end of Phase 2 here. $420, nice. These first couple of turns during Phase 3 are going to be spent healing, basically. So I need to wait for a couple of my Jin to come back. And he's also going to just keep hammering me with Cruel Ruin, if I remember. I'm also going to be put in a situation on the next turn where I won't have access to Pure Apply, so I'm going to have to use Pure Wish instead. As you can see here. It's completely fine though, because it didn't damage me all that much in the previous turn, so I still managed to get back up to full health. Doom Dragon's command list also gets smaller with every phase, basically. During this last one, you can do, like, yeah, Jin Storm is different from Gem Blast in that it targets everyone. Doesn't matter for a solo setting. He has Cruel Ruin still. Lost a couple of spells. I believe no longer casts Haunt. I think he does Dark Soul Gasp instead, because that has the Haunt effect baked into it. Still has Guard Aura too, so whenever he does that, I'm gonna take the opportunity to heal. The number of actions per turn also goes down per head. I believe he acts twice a turn with one head, possibly free. Let's see if he does anything else after Cruel Ruin here. He shouldn't. Okay. So it's 4 actions with 3 heads, 3 actions with 2 heads, and 2 with 1, so... While the command list is smaller, and the amount of actions are too, there are more... It's less bloated, so you're still more likely to get absolutely hammered with Cruel Ruin there, leaving me at like 6 health. At this point, too, in the recording, I was still very nervous, because if I fail an input, like by hitting the A button once many times, as I said, yeah, that's 16 minutes of my life just gone, which is super fun. So at this point I was very nervous. My hands were very sweaty as well. So failing inputs was even easier. It's also very hot today because it's now summer. It's quite humid. And I'm a dumbass, so I had a cup of coffee earlier before I started recording this, so... Okay, spring. I'm just gonna try and see where I am in the route here. I should be using Pure Play next turn, I think. Yes, okay. This was also another part of the fight where my route has an extra thing in it. That never happens normally. It says extra Pure Play in parentheses. Because while routing, I was unsure, like, shit, did I heal twice here? Or did I not? I didn't, but I put it there just in case, because while I was filming an attempt earlier, I'm assuming I did a missed input. Or I failed an input and hit the A button once many times. And he did something completely different after that Pure Play, so I had to do another one. Using Jupiter there to get haste back for later. Another Pure Play. This part of the fight is really all about capitalizing on the turns where you're not getting absolutely destroyed by Cruel Ruin. I'm gonna do haste to dodge another Ginstorm. And you might be thinking, wow, that's boring, you're just avoiding his most dangerous thing. I don't think I really had a choice, to be honest. Because if it had hit me, I would have died, most likely. Which is why I allow myself to get hit by it right towards the end when it doesn't matter anymore. Just for fun. This is also one of those parts in the route where it just says Pure Play 3 times in a row, so this part specifically, right at the end of Doom Dragon, it was very important not to get lost in the scripts. I did that once. And I lost 20 minutes. Fun. And as I said, after this I'm gonna show you the side bosses that I didn't upload. So stick around for that if you're interested. I'm noticing I don't really have as much to say here as I did during Aspel. Partly because there's so much more packed into a lot, like way shorter videos with the Aspel solo. Here, I'm mainly just following a rotation for most of these fights, and the rotation's obvious when you've seen the videos. So the only thing I can really do is point out things that stood out, like boss mechanics and things where I had to maybe do specific actions. Here we go, this is where I'm gonna get hit by Ginstorm. And just to be a total asshole, finish it off with a normal attack. And that's Doom Dragon. What an endurance round this fight is. Also, spoiler warning if you haven't played this really old game yet. The sad part, kinda, about this was I felt a lot of accomplishment when I finished the routing. But I finished the routing like a month before I got a recording of it. So once I actually had it recorded, I didn't feel nice. glad that's finally done. I felt more like, man, that was underwhelming. And, wow, that was annoying. But in hindsight, it was a very, very fun experience doing this run. Most of it was fun. The mishap with Doom Dragon at the end was really unfortunate, but I mean, what can you do? Always room for improvement next time, I guess. And that's not really a problem I have with the run itself, that's more like with the process. I still think the fight turned out perfectly fine. I love the regular attack to kill him at the end. That's a nice little touch, I think. So, before I get too deep into talking about, what I think about the run, I'm gonna show you Valukar, Star Magician, and Sentinel. Before then, I'm gonna take a quick little break, which you are not going to notice because this will be edited together. Okay, now that I've had a nice refreshing piss, let's jump straight into Valukar. Now, these video files are going to be different because these have not been edited. These are just the raw recordings, so I'm going to jump forward to 1 minute and 10 seconds, which should be when the successful attempt starts. So, as I said during Avimander, Valukar can also stun you. He can also use your Jinn against you and do summons, which is a bit of a pain. So it's not really worth it to set things up, especially not with one character. Because say you have 3 Jinn on standby, you use another one, he's just gonna summon Boreas or something. So normally, what I would do in this fight, and what I end up doing here as well, is I'm just gonna let him set up my Jinn for me, and then capitalize on that. Except for certain parts like maybe this, where the route kind of demands that I do something else, so I wanted to get another guard off there to make the stun do less damage. This guy basically has he has like 4 things he can do. He can normal attack, he can do stun jip, which is probably supposed to be stun zip, but whatever. He can also do Jinn stun, which puts a random Jinn in on standby. And the final ability is called Crucible, but it's literally just him doing summons. So quite often he's going to stun you, and you can be stunned for quite a while. I used guard at the start because I know a lot of the damage he's going to do is going to be purely physical, so if I can reduce that by using guard, I will do it. And sometimes he just does that, does 2 Jinn stuns, which gives me a free summon on the next turn. Very nice of him to do that. You see, without guard up, that suddenly did 184 damage, as opposed to 12 damage. So I'm gonna make sure to put guard up again. And he's gonna reply by giving me a free summon. What a nice guy. As you can see there, a level 2 summon does almost as much damage as a level 4 summon did to Doom Dragon, and that's because Valukar has way more health. It's actually quite easy for a side boss, because he does have a lot of health, so your summon, even your low power summons will really rip through him, and he's more than happy to set those up for you. So my strategy here is basically that. I'm staying alive as well as I can, using Jinn when necessary and setting up guard so he doesn't kill me by stunning me 5 turns in a row, and then whenever he happens to set up a summon for me, I use it, basically. believe that was manipulation using Mercury there. So he couldn't set up a strong summon or something. He ends up using Nereid anyway, but I think if I hadn't done that, he would have used Neptune instead, since he would have had an extra Djinn. And I believe me using Break on him on that turn was specifically not really to get rid of his elemental boost, because he doesn't do that much damage anyway. I'm pretty sure it was to prevent a stun from something. From Stun Jip, obviously. Again, it's been a good while since I recorded this. So what do you think the thing on Valukar's head is? Is that a helmet, or is it hair? The red stuff flowing down. As a kid, I always thought it was like a leather cap or something, but it looks like it has a side parting, so maybe it's hair. Yeah, I'm now stunned for quite some time, and there's just nothing I can do about it. That's the most dangerous thing about this fight. Everything can be going perfectly smoothly, because he can't really do too much damage to you in any one turn. That's me getting lost in the script again, having to look up where I am. Really, the most dangerous part is when he manages to get a stun in on you, because then you can't do anything. And he's more than happy to attempt to stun you multiple turns in a row. As I said, he can stun you while you're stunned. Which sucks. And there, I believe, my class changed, so the guard synergy was in a different place. So I had to go hunting for it. He sets up a Neptune for me, so I take that chance. You should be dead soon. Gotta get another stun in though, of course. Why not? I'm quite happy for him to do Djinn stun and then immediately summon something, because that means he's not gonna do stun Jip on that turn. I believe I kill him with a summon here. Or not. Okay. Oh, he's gonna set up another one for me. How nice. Still no? Oh yeah. This, I remember the end of this now. Double Mercury into Nereid. That's just stuff that can happen with this boss. It's pretty funny. And down he goes. So that's Valukar. This is one of the more fun side bosses, especially for soloing. It's probably the most fun. The other two are more just a pain in the ass, and Dullahan is Dullahan, so you can be pretty clever with manipulating him into using Djinn stun when you want him to, and stuff like that. It's a pretty fun fight. And then moving on, we have... Actually, let me look up my stats and stuff for this one real quick. I believe I can just actually do that with the emulator. Hang on. Okay, let's see what I had for this one. Level 60. Looks like I had a lot of the same equipment I had for Doom Dragon. If this one specifically is the one I was talking about. Look at that. 30 extra power for free. And 70 resist is absolutely huge. Again, not terribly useful, because the boss that uses the most Mercury stuff is Poseidon, and you can't get this armor until way later. That kind of sucks, but yeah. It's very good for offense, though. Alright, while I'm here, why don't I check out... Actually, I don't think I have the Star Magician state anymore. But I did write that stuff down, so I can take a look at that. Let me take a look at Sentinel as well. Ah, yeah. I remember. The strat I had for Sentinel is basically regular attacks and Pure Apply, and that's about it. It's a really, really, really boring fight. And the way I accomplished this was... I'm using a very specific equipment setup here. So I have the Tisiphone Edge, or Tisiphone, however you want to say that, which is the strongest light blade in the game. So by proxy, it is also the strongest weapon Jenna can equip. I have the Cursed Circlet, or Demon Circlet. I don't know why it says it raises evade and increases criticals. What it actually does is it increases your unleash rate. And the Riot Gloves do the same thing. The Mithril Cloaks also increase your unleash rate, and the Hyper Boots do as well. So with all of this, I believe I have... I think it's a 97% chance to trigger the unleash effect of Tisiphone Edge. Which for all intents and purposes means that almost every regular attack will result in Vengeance. And then if Vengeance procs all of its hits, that's a huge amount of damage. So that's basically what I ended up doing for Sentinel. I believe the rest of the equipment is just extra stuff. Yeah, Golden Shirt just because I might as well. It's not a huge increase to my stats, but it's a couple of extra stats for free, so it's pretty nice. But yeah, let's take a look at Star Magician first before I do that. Let me just bring up that notepad document real quick. Alright, here it is. As you can tell by the name, Jenna statdump.txt, this is where I put all of the stuff that would go in the video descriptions. So I could just copy and paste everything, and I basically just filled this out with everything almost before I even started doing the run, and then the only thing I had to slot in there was Jenna's equipment and Jin and her stats, and then everything else would remain the same. So this is based on the Star Magician file I have. I don't think I've updated the other two. Yeah, Dullahan is here too, lol. Yeah, there's Sentinel. It says Jenna's level 6 default equipment because I just copied it over from the first boss. Yeah, so this is accurate, however. So I went with... I think I went with the same setup, actually. Yeah, it says right there, 97% unleash rate. And the reason for that is because I need a lot of damage in one turn to bring down the balls that I don't want to stay alive. Basically how Star Magician goes in a solo like this, and normally, and during normal play as well, is ideally you want him to just be left with Thunderballs. Because if he is, you can just focus Star Magician down, whereas if he has a Guard Ball, that can protect Star Magician from damage, which sucks. If you have a Refresh Ball, that can heal him. If you have an Anger Ball on the field, that can just self-destruct and threaten to kill you because it deals a lot of damage. So basically what I ended up doing for this fight, as we'll see here, once I jump to the appropriate timestamp, which is 23 seconds in, is I tried to get exactly that to happen. He starts with one of each. I start by killing off the Refresh Ball, because I don't want that around. I know Scorch is going to one-shot it, so whenever a Refresh Ball shows up, I'm going to use Scorch on it. And the goal here, as I said, is to just have Star Magician only have Thunderballs left on the field, because all of the others are a nuisance to deal with. You see there, Angry Mind does like 300 damage, which is a lot. Next I'm going to try and take down the Guard Ball. See Vengeance triggers, I get the full effect, which kills it immediately. He responds by summoning another Anger Ball. They actually do take quite a lot of damage in this fight, specifically from the Anger Balls. And even when he only has Thunderballs on the field, that's still 5 enemies that are attacking you every single turn, which adds up to a lot of damage. This battle theme, though. So right now he has only one Thunderball, that is the one he spawned with. I'm gonna take this opportunity to set Scorch, just in case he summons another Refresh Ball. Right now I'm not too concerned with attacking Star Magician. I know I'm gonna get plenty of opportunities to do so later, and if I damage him and he ends up summoning a Refresh Ball and it heals him, that just basically threw all the damage I did right down the trash. Interestingly, I still decide to go for an attack there, and I trigger max damage Vengeance, so... maybe I felt confident I could kill any Refresh Ball that shows up on turn 1. Oops, that was a very fast closing of the menu. That also happens sometimes. If you press A to enter the fight menu and then you press a left to go immediately to defend, it will sometimes just jump you over to the item selection. Which is interesting. I don't know why Sheba is on my team here. I actually can't remember. I might have needed her for some synergy inside the dungeon, so I wanted to keep her close. Okay, so I probably routed this out in a way that I know no Refresh Balls are going to be coming anytime soon, so I feel comfortable attacking Star Magician. But generally, putting a bunch of damage into Star Magician when you can't guarantee that he won't be healed is a bad idea. Because that's a turn you could have spent doing something else. Like setting Scorch, or healing, or killing another ball, or something. Here I also knew the Guard Ball was not gonna cast Guard Aura. Because I routed it out, I tried like, oh, I wonder if I can get away with a basic attack here, and I could, so I kept it. I believe I'm killing the Guard Ball next turn. Or I'm gonna attempt to, in any event. Sorry, Guardian Ball. Yeah, you're kinda at the mercy of the Vengeance rolls when it comes to killing the balls quickly. I'm also not really interested in using a bunch of Jin during this fight, because it's going to class me down, and I'm taking so much damage every turn that it's something that's very scary to do. And also because, well, throwing out a bunch of summons will damage the Thunder Balls, and if I kill all of the balls, he'll be free to summon a bunch of new ones. Which could be Guardian Balls or Refresh Balls, which could make the fight take even longer. It's still a pretty long one, it's around like 13 minutes. Finally get a max damage roll there. He defended though, so he didn't take that much damage. Something I was confused by when I started getting back into this was how does defending help if you don't act before an attack that comes in? 420 health, nice. When you defend, you instantly take half the damage. You instantly get the damage reduction thing. You don't have to wait for it to actually become your turn, because the text saying that you're defending is just flavor. So here I'm gonna heal, because if I use Scorch here, I'm gonna die. The Refresh Ball doesn't heal, which is nice, and I lucked out a lot, so the Thunder Balls decided to use normal attacks instead of spells. So I take a lot less damage. And he spawns a Guardian Ball, and yeah. So I've had a lot of Thunder Balls on the field so far, but I want all of them to be there. Because that's when I know I can actually fully focus on killing Star Magician. And I set Scorch just in case. Because at this point I don't know if another Refresh Ball is coming or not. Also helps to be just at a high, at as high a class as possible. Yeah, can't talk. And this fight could, of course, be perfected by shuffling the RNG and getting different ball patterns and stuff, but I figured, you know what, why not have an extended fight where I try to set something up for a long time? If this were to be released, if I had actually done all of the extra bosses and this would have been released, I probably would have redone this. Because I'm seeing some stuff I could have done better, like optimizing how the balls show up on the field and stuff like that. It's been a good while now since I actually killed the ball. The Guardian Ball's been allowed to be there for quite a while. So, and I get unlucky and don't get the 97% activation, but I do get a crit, however, so that's pretty nice. And now, there are just Thunderballs on the field, so now I can actually start focusing on Star Magician. Yeah, I don't need to cast Wish there, everyone's dead. And this is a decent way to cheese the fight, honestly. Just waiting until you get Thunderballs. They're way easier to deal with. Altogether, they might deal as much damage as an Anger Ball, but Anger Balls are unreliable because if they explode, they die. So then you might get something really detrimental on the field. And from here on out, it's basically going to be attacking and healing. Pretty much. Because the fight is now in a state where I'm in no danger of dying as long as I'm not on low health and I decide to not heal. But there's very, very few things that can actually be dangerous to me right now. Shouldn't have much more health now, I don't think. This setup I have on Jenna, with the 97% unleash rate, is incredibly strong. And you can get duplicates of all of these items, except for the Cleric's Ring, which you can only find one of. And it's in the original. You can't actually find it in this game. Unless you go to the debug menu and like spawn it in your inventory, of course. That's also worth mentioning. I used a bronze password for this run, so the only thing that really got carried over were Jin. So I did actually have to go into the debug menu to give myself the Cleric's Ring. But, I made sure to never give myself items that I couldn't get naturally, aside from the Cleric's Ring, and I could have gotten that by carrying over more data from the first game. I just didn't want to. Because at that point I didn't think I'd need the Cleric's Ring. Turns out it's pretty nice to have. And that's Star Magician. Once you're only left with Thunderballs, it's really not that difficult. Getting to that part can be a bit of a pain though. Okay, and finally we have Sentinel, which is by far the most boring fight in the entire run. It's not boring in the sense that I only do the same thing, because I basically did that with Chestbeaters too. The difference here is that this is endgame, so I have so many options, just none of them really seemed viable for a fun strat. So I cheesed the hell out of him, because he acts 3 times per turn, right? He is completely immune to synergy. He heals for 200 health every turn, I think. And he deals shitloads of damage. He can easily kill you in 1 turn if he wants to. So I basically just used the 97% unleash rate setup I showed you earlier, and I just went to town on him, hoping I would get as many max damage procs of Vengeance as possible, so that I would have a damage buffer whenever I needed to heal. Because if he heals for 200 every turn, and I deal like, I don't know, 400 with a Jin, as soon as I need to heal, that damage is just undone, really. So this is how it ended up being, and it's a pretty boring fight. And at this point, I already knew that, hey, I'm probably not going to do these bosses, but I want to see if Sentinel, if I can, like, kill him. No matter how I end up doing it. So if I were to upload these, in the event that Dullahan would go up, I would redo this one as well to try and find a different strategy. But yeah, let's just watch. I realize it's kind of anticlimactic to end with this one. But it really is just a very oppressive fight. He can do so much to you, and you can't really do that much to him. Especially if he starts spamming, like, Armor Crusher, which he's gonna do later. Armor Crush. Which doesn't do a lot of damage now. But, you'll see it hit for pretty hard later. I'm also casting Guard on myself to mitigate some of the damage he does. He does have access to Break, however, so he can get rid of that if he wants to. And, of course, Armor Crush can just reduce my damage anyway. Like, the first one there did 1 damage. And then basically got rid of the extra armor I gave myself. Speaking of scripts that were hard to follow, this one was incredibly difficult to follow because the route basically just says attack, attack, pure apply, attack, attack, pure apply, attack, pure apply, and it's incredibly hard to lose your way in there. Yeah, now he's starting to hit pretty hard, and he's lowering my defense a lot, so he's gonna start fucking me right here, like 200, 250 again, and a regular attack on top of that. Normally, again, that wouldn't be so bad, because in a party setting, all of those debuffs would probably be spread out, but when they're all focused on one target, it becomes incredibly oppressive. Yeah, and my defense can't actually drop any lower now either. And similarly, his defense can't go any higher. This is really a prime example of a fight where he just so much is thrown at you every single turn. In some ways, it is more oppressive than Doom Dragon, because Doom Dragon at least has turns where nothing much really happens, but here you're guaranteed to take at least, like, 500 damage in a turn. I did fight these in the canonical order as well, or the semi-canonical order, I guess. I started with Valukar, which is generally considered the easiest super boss. Then I did Star Magician, and finally this guy, who is considered to be the hardest one, next to Dullahan, of course. Even with this really simple strategy, it's quite important to know when to heal and not take risks. Even though the strategy might seem really simple. This is just a very restrictive fight in general, because you're taking so much punishment every turn, and he just gets free healing. This battle theme is also a banger, though. Yeah, just kind of run out of things to say. I do believe you can block his synergy if you use a Jin, but doing so just means he's more likely to use Armor Crush, which is almost worse. So if he starts using that 3 times a turn, every turn, you're going to die very quickly. But that could be something to explore if I decide to redo this. But for now, that is all the content I have for the Jenna run. And it's also the end of the commentary. Funnily enough. Not at all funnily enough, I don't know why I said that. But yeah, this was, as I said in the comment on the Doom Dragon video, this was a very spur-of-the-moment kind of thing. I just kind of started working on this one night, seeing like, oh, I wonder if that Jenna solo I've been thinking about and dreaming about is like possible. And then I came up to King Scorpion and I was like, oh shit, this is very doable. Because back when I tried the Lost Age content many years ago after the Isaac run, I was planning on doing a duo run with Jenna and Sheba. I made it up to King Scorpion, and I had a no-death rule, so none of the characters were allowed to die at any point. And I couldn't get past King Scorpion. Because I was way worse at the game back then. It's funny what, like, half a decade of experience and progressively sucking less can do to some gameplay. Yeah, this has been a very, very fun experience. And I don't know for sure if I have other Golden Sun things coming. So if you subscribed purely for that, which I've gained a lot of subscribers recently after since starting this run, I'm sorry. This is not the main focus of the channel. This was a side thing I wanted to do for fun. Well, maybe I shouldn't say the side thing, because I do want to branch out and do more than just Tales, like I've done in the past. But I don't know if you can expect more content like this anytime soon. Those of you who saw the reveal video might think otherwise, might be expecting certain contents to come, and I will leave that up to your imagination, and time will tell. But yeah, I don't really have that much else to say, really. I didn't go into too much detail about boss attacks and stuff during these videos, because all that stuff is listed in the descriptions of the original videos, so if you're curious about anything, you can look that stuff up there. And it's also quite difficult to remember things that like stand out, because it was a very long time ago since I recorded a lot of this, and you know, some of the stuff is just obvious to me, so I might forget to point it out. But if I find anything else, I'll be sure to leave some on-screen text to notify you of that. But for now, I'm gonna go work on some other things, and I will see you in the next project, whatever that ends up being. I hope you enjoyed watching this, and I hope you enjoyed the run as well. And I will see you some other time. Peace, and love, and understanding are all good things. Alright, goodbye.